This is the Ford Transit Connect cargo van. The regular Ford Transit's little brother. And though this thing is only 6 feet tall, it doesn't mean that it's any less practical than any commercial vehicle should be. And today I'm going to be walking you through everything that regards the Ford Transit Connect. Alrighty, moving on to the exterior of the Transit Connect, and you will see that this is as basic as the eye can see. As much molded in color plastic that Ford could add to this car is what they did. If you look at the mirrors, if you look at the front grille, all this black cheap plastic, which is fine. If you really think that this car is supposed to be luxurious, you're completely missing the point of what this vehicle is supposed to be. This vehicle is supposed to be practical for commercial use. It's not supposed to look like a Lamborghini. Nevertheless, let's go over the exterior styling of this. You will see in the front you have these Ford style headlights that you kind of get this design from a lot of Ford models today, including the Fusion, the debunked Focus, the older Escape, really have this kind of headlight design on them. But other than that, you do have some fog lights down there as well, but the front of this really isn't that exciting, nor is the exterior really in general that exciting. All right, moving on to the side of the Transit Connect, you can really see how small this is compared to an actual Transit. You have hubcaps on top of steel wheels on the Transit Connect, just on the XLT line. I'm sure you could upgrade to regular alloy wheels. In fact, I know you can. I don't know what they look like. I'll pop a picture up on the screen right now of what the alloy wheels will look like if you upgrade to higher trim levels, but on the XL and XLT you do get these hubcaps. Now the way the door works is just how it usually works on any kind of cargo van, especially on the Transit. All you have to do is pull this lever out and it just opens like that, and if you push it far enough it locks into place. Now to undo it and shut the door, all you have to do is pull on the handle, and you can either let momentum close it, which it probably won't shut all the way, or you can just force it closed like that. But other than that, it's not that exciting. It's really just body painted panels, and then you have black plastic running along the car. It's not that exciting. Alrighty, another cool part of the Transit is something with the rear doors. Let's say it's a windy day like today, and if you left the doors like this, it would blow the doors shut. Or let's say you're trying to get something wide out of the back of the Transit Connect and you need the doors to open further. Well, no fear. There are these yellow buttons on the door that you can use to decouple the door from a hinge that keeps it in further. All you need to do to activate that is to press this yellow button in, it decouples it from the hinge, and you can push the door open further than if the hinges were connected. It's a very simple concept to use, and it makes it open wider so you can stuff anything you want, or you can avoid the doors from being slammed shut by the wind. Now to undo this process, all you have to do is literally shut the door. The hinges recouple with the door, and you can push the door in just like that, in the same way on this side as well, and it just shuts just like that. Alright, moving on to the interior of the Transit Connect. Now, just like the regular Transit that I made a video on not too long ago, this thing is pretty basic. This is the XLT model, which still introduces some upgrades over the regular XL model that you can get, and that includes stuff like this infotainment screen in the middle that runs Sync 3. If you get the XL model, you do not get this screen. But other than that, this is a pretty basic interior. You only get single zone climate control. You get plastic just about everywhere you touch. The gauge cluster is very basic and doesn't have much information in it other than being a regular gauge cluster that you will find in something like a baseline Escape. So you're not really finding anything that is out of the ordinary. This is a commercial use vehicle. It's not going to have tons of gizmos and gadgets in it that will take up from the whole purpose of this vehicle. That's why you don't have an 8-inch full-size Sync 3 display and have a very small one, and that I've been told is basically straight out of the Fiesta ST, and that's exactly why you don't have drive modes. That's exactly why you don't have a sport mode for the transmission, and that's exactly why you don't have a beefy engine either. It's just because it's not needed for this kind of application. Now let's go over some of the features in here, like I was talking about with the simplified gauge cluster. The gauge cluster is just basic, mostly analog, and in the center you do have a horizontally mounted screen where you can view your stuff like your tire pressure, trip information, and stuff like that. Normal stuff that you'd find in a car. And the steering wheel is also very basic. Now this is a very, very old steering wheel out of Ford. This is nothing like the new steering wheels you will find out of any Ford vehicles. Literally, the steering wheel is right out of something like a 2013 Ford Escape. It doesn't look that great. Now surprisingly, this thing does have lane keep assist. That comes with the XLT trim on the Transit Connect. It is useful, and all it does is when you get close to the side of the road, when it detects lanes, it'll just steer you back in. Now moving on to the center, like I said, you have this smaller size Sync 3 display. If you get the XL model, you do not get this display. You just get a regular Sync system, not Sync 3 with the touch screen and the audio and the phone connectivity and everything like that. But you do get this small screen. It's great to have that rather than nothing. Below that, you have all the controls for your Sync 3 as well, including volume control, stereo controls, tuning control, screen off, skip and pause and play, and then you have your hazard button. Now surprisingly, and I didn't really think that this would be in a commercial vehicle, this has a wireless charging pad right below the entire Sync system, which is a really nice touch for being on the go and having to do everything and be quick about it. You don't have to reach down to plug in your phone or any electronics that can charge wirelessly. You just drop whatever you have to charge into there and it automatically starts charging. Below that, you have your climate controls, which literally ripped right out of something like an older Focus or an older Escape. Very simple, very basic. It doesn't need to be insanely high tech like you find on other newer Ford vehicles that are higher in trim level. And below that, you have an eco mode button. That's all the other modes you get for this car is normal and eco mode. You have a traction control button, and you have an auto stop start button for your engine, which is starting to become more commonplace on cars in 2021 and for the last couple of years. And below that, you have your gear selector, which is an 8-speed automatic transmission. It does have select shift on it, but no sport mode, as you can see. It's just PRNDM. You move into the center, you do have 2 USB Type A ports and a 12-volt socket for anything you want to be able to plug in. This thing is not short of any ports that you can use to plug your phone in, and these ports directly connect to the Sync operating system as well, so you can connect your phone. You also have a manually operating parking brake, which isn't anything special, 2 cup holders, some little storage areas down here, and then a center console that in reality is not all that big. But remember, this is a commercial use vehicle that really isn't going to be used all the time for storing personal items. Now, as for stuff like comfort, the seats are pretty decently comfortable. They're this cloth. As for practicality, you do get door bins, and you get, like I said, the center console. You also get a glove box that is a decent size as well. And as for the front seats, that's basically it. And before I forget, if we look up here as well, just like in the regular Transit, you do get these massive sun visors. And this time they have mirrors, unlike in the regular Transit, you don't always get the mirrors, but these have mirrors. And you also get your map lights up here as well. Now what's crazy is you can store stuff above this area with the lighting and the visors. There's this little storage area up here, but there is a warning that clearly says, do not place heavy or hard objects on shelf. Could you just imagine this thing falling onto you while you're driving down the highway? Probably not the most fun thing in the world. That about does it for the front seats. The back of the van is a completely different story, and we'll move back there and talk about some of that. But we are done up here in the front seats. And now moving on to the rear of the Transit Connect. The rear of the Transit Connect, this one, the long wheelbase model, can hold 127.4 cubic feet of cargo. Now that's nowhere near as much as the regular Transit can hold, but for something this size that's about the same length as an Escape, that's pretty decent. And for commercial use, if you need it for light duty work, it's not bad. On top of that, on each side of the Transit Connect, you have 2 sliding doors, and on the back, where the opening is right now that you're looking through on the camera, you can either get 2 rearward opening doors, or you can get a lift gate. So there are some options when it comes to configuring even a Transit Connect. The floor in here is a vinyl material, so you can place just about anything you want on this flooring in the back of the Transit. But other than that, it is very bare bones. When you look at the walls in here, you just see aluminum panels. On top of that, on the ground, you do have tie-down points for anything you do want to tie down. That way, if you have any loose cargo that is very fragile and you don't want it flying all over the place when you decide to step on the gas in your Ford Transit Connect, it won't go flying all over the place, and you can tie it down to the floor. And that just about does it for the rear of the Transit. I believe 127.4 cubic feet of cargo room isn't terrible. It's not as much as if you were to get a full-size Transit Connect, but nevertheless, it's a decent size for a commercial vehicle this tiny. Alrighty, just in case you were interested in what the Transit made for power figures, this is a 2-liter inline-4 mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. And this engine makes 162 horsepower and 144 pound-feet of torque and gets about 25 miles per gallon combined city and highway. Now there is an optional 2.5-liter inline-4, both are naturally aspirated, except that inline-4 is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and it makes 169 horsepower and 171 pound-feet of torque. And it gets about 22 miles per gallon combined city and highway.
All right, so driving the Ford Transit Connect cargo van, you know, it always interests me to do these commercial vehicles because the premise on which they're built is completely different than the consumer vehicle. So what the companies focus on is completely different, and it's interesting to step into these vehicles and see what companies are focusing on in their commercial sectors. And clearly, it is not the same as their consumer vehicles. So I want to start off with how is it like to drive. The road noise in this thing is absolutely horrendous. And I want to preface what all of them about to say with these vehicles are not meant to be comfortable, they're not meant to be nice, they're meant to be strictly used for commercial use. In the case of the cargo van, if you got the passenger van, it's a little different. But the way this is set up, mainly for commercial use. So what I'm about to say is based on those factors. Now, as for power delivery and getting up to highway speeds, it does all right getting up to highway speeds. It's nothing insane. The 2-liter inline 4 in this, which 162 horsepower is not bad, but it's just not impressive. I think the powertrain is decently smooth. I haven't had any jerkiness from the transmission. The throttle response is decent. It's not under my expectations for something like this vehicle. Now, drivability and steering and everything like that, same thing. It's just basically walk the line, middle of the road. It's not bad, it's not terrible. I definitely have a more interesting time reviewing the interior and exterior of these vehicles than driving them, because driving them is just no experience at all.
So that is the Ford Transit Connect. If you like the video, go ahead and smash that like button. And if you want to see more from us, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next video.